Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're taking a focused look today, really digging into the online conversation around Tselha's recent vlog.
Right.
Our mission is to get past just, scrolling through comments and really figure out the main opinions, the core worries people have and what they're actually calling for.
Exactly.
We've got a whole stack of those YouTube comments right here ready to unpack.
Yeah, and it's not just about counting likes, is it? It's more about understanding the kind of the undercurrents, the themes that pop up when someone shares something so personal online.
Like a snapshot of a community reacting.
Pretty much, yeah, in real time.
Okay, let's jump right in then.
Yeah.
Looking at the overall reaction to Tselha's vlog, what hits you first? Is it all over the place, or is there a pretty clear feeling?
Oh, it's strikingly polarized, really. You see this huge wave of support for Tenzin Tselha.
Mhm.
And at the same time, some really strong negative feelings aimed at an individual named Choesang. It's a very dramatic split.
A dramatic split.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's behind that negativity towards Choesang? What are the main things people are saying?
Well, the comments keep bringing up some pretty serious accusations. Things like dishonesty, manipulation,
Okay.
but also, more worryingly, claims of physical and emotional abuse.
Oh.
And on top of that, a lot of commenters seem convinced he was basically exploiting Tselha,
Yeah.
using her for content, and for financial benefit.
So it really sounds like the audience has sort of circled the wagons around Tselha. What kind of support are they actually offering her in the comments?
The emotional support is quite massive, actually. Lots of comments directly encouraging her, saying things like, stay strong, keep going with your channel.
Right.
You get a real sense that viewers feel, I don't know, a connection and want her to push through this.
It's not just words, though, is it? I think you mentioned people were suggesting actual actions.
Yes, definitely. A good chunk of the comments includes calls for people to, do something about Choesang. Mostly reporting his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And also actively boycotting his products or anything he's selling.
Okay. Now, what about the other side? Were there people questioning Tselha's story or offering a different take?
There were some, yeah. A relatively small number, though. Comments suggesting a bit of skepticism or maybe waiting to hear Choesang's side,
Okay.
or even bringing up things from Tselha's past. But what's really interesting is how quickly those voices got shouted down, essentially.
Oh.
The majority supporting Tselha jumped in with rebuttals pretty fast. It just shows how strong that main feeling was.
And there was something about money, too. Financial stuff.
Yeah, that revolves around accusations that Choesang tried to paint Tselha as, like having stolen money from him. But that story doesn't seem to have gotten much traction at all with her supporters. They mostly dismiss it, especially, given the other much more serious allegations.
Right, it gets overshadowed. Okay, that gives us the broad strokes. Let's zoom in a bit. Can you give some specific examples of the pro-Tselha comments? What phrases really stick out?
What's noticeable is how direct and honestly quite personal the support is. Lots of short, punchy phrases like, "We are with you," or "Never give up Tselha."
Simple and clear.
Yeah, and things like, "All viewers support her." These aren't just like casual thumbs ups, they feel like real solidarity. And then there's the empathy. Comments like, "I can understand the fear inside her." People are clearly connecting emotionally.
Right.
And crucially, loads of admiration for her courage. Proud of you for coming out. Thank God you spoke up, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's powerful. And flipping that, what language are people using about Choesang? What are the buzzwords for the negative sentiment?
The language aimed at him is way more critical, often pretty harsh, actually. He gets called liar, narcissist, manipulative a lot. People seem convinced his public image is just fake.
So questioning his whole persona.
Exactly. But it goes further. Direct, serious accusations of abuse. People saying things like, physical abuse is not okay, or he committed domestic violence. And real outrage, like how dare him to raise hands. And alongside the physical stuff, there are these claims of control, too, like forcing her to quit her job, cutting off her social media contacts. Pretty serious stuff.
And it feels like those accusations about using her for YouTube and money really struck a chord.
Absolutely. You see so many comments saying he just used her. Specifically for, the YouTube channel benefits and the money.
Right.
And the fact that people bring up his past relationships suggests they see a pattern.
Connecting the dots.
Yeah. And his claims about being scammed financially, people just aren't buying it. Many see it as a tactic, maybe to distract or get sympathy. Widespread disbelief on that point.
Okay. So if you pull back again, what are the main themes running through all this intense commentary?
If you tie these sentiments together, a few key themes really stand out. First, this stark contrast of truth and deception. There's this almost rock-solid belief that Tselha is being truthful, and conversely, that Choesang is lying. And for people who maybe had doubts about him before, this felt like validation, I knew it kind of thing.
Given the strong emotions, abuse has to be a major theme, too.
Oh, definitely. The theme of abuse and control is huge. The outrage over the alleged manipulation, both physical and emotional, it's intense.
Hmm.
And it's not just passive head shaking. People are demanding accountability. Some are even sharing helpline info, trying to offer practical support.
And the money aspect we talked about, that forms another theme.
Yes, financial exploitation and accusations is a big driver of the anger. The idea that he might have exploited her financially and then tried to frame her for theft.
Yeah, that's double blow.
Exactly. It clearly infuriated people. And you see this widespread rejection of the idea she stole anything, some even arguing she was entitled to funds.
Right.
And this anger fuels those calls to action, unsubscribing, boycotting his sampa. Some people even saying they regret ever supporting him financially.
It really sounds like people are looking for some kind of, I don't know, balancing of the scales here.
Yeah.
Justice.
That fits right into the next theme. Karma and justice. You get this strong sense that people feel Choesang is getting what he deserves, often literally called karma,
Mm-hmm.
and a very clear call for #justice for Tselha. This just cements that polarization we saw from the start.
And lastly, you mentioned kids being brought up. How does that fit in?
Right, the children's welfare theme.
Oh.
There's concern for the kids involved on both sides.
Okay.
Some comments draw unfavorable comparisons between Choesang's alleged behavior and, the kids. And there's also criticism that he apparently used his children as an excuse for the separation.
It's amazing how these themes all kind of braid together in the comments. Okay, let's shift slightly. How are people actually saying all this? What about the language, the tone, those calls to action?
Well, the language, as we've said, is supercharged. Very emotional. Lots of those strong words. Liar, narcissist, abuser. And emojis are everywhere, adding another layer of support, anger, disgust, you name it. It's also worth mentioning the Tibetan comments. We haven't analyzed them specifically here, but given the overall mood, they probably echo the same strong support, suggests it's a wider community reaction.
And the overall tone.
Yeah.
Is it consistent?
Overwhelmingly, yes. It's deeply empathetic and supportive towards Tselha, and then flips to being accusatory, angry towards Choesang. What's also really interesting is how direct and interactive it is. People talk to Tselha directly.
Giving advice.
Yeah, advice, encouragement, reassurance. And there's a lot of back and forth between commenters, too, mostly reinforcing each other's views and pushing back against any dissent.
And those calls to action, they were pretty specific, right?
Very direct, yeah. Explicit calls to report Choesang's YouTube channel. Some even say, I've already done it.
Okay.
Unsubscribing is mentioned a lot. Boycotting his products, his sampa gets named specifically.
Yeah.
And then on the supportive side for Tselha, people urge her to get help if needed, but also, really importantly, to keep making her vlogs. Keep going.
It sounds like a really activated online community. How does that engagement level itself tell a story here?
Oh, the engagement is sky high. You see it in the sheer number of likes on supportive comments. That signals a strong consensus.
A visual agreement.
Exactly. And all the replies and discussions just amplify it. Mostly, like I said, reinforcing the main pro-Tselha anti-Choesang view. Even when someone disagrees, it just sparks more defense of the majority opinion.
Right.
And the fact that Tselha herself actually replied to at least one comment, explaining why she deleted an earlier video, that really shows how interactive this whole space became.
Now, you did mention earlier, though, that there were some other viewpoints, some counter-arguments in the mix.
Right. It's important to note it wasn't a complete monolith. Though small in number, there were comments expressing skepticism. Things like, no one knows who is right or wrong. Or, let's wait for the story from Choesang. Calls for balance, essentially. Don't judge fast story. Listen to both sides together.
Okay, basic fairness arguments.
Pretty much. And there were a few direct criticisms aimed at Tselha, too. Accusations of talking too much, seeking sympathy, maybe even brainwashing, or the theft idea resurfacing slightly. One comment suggested maybe it was more complex, hinting at, mutual financial expectations, a blame game.
A more nuanced take.
A more nuanced or at least different interpretation. And finally, a few people just felt this kind of personal stuff shouldn't be blasted all over social media anyway. Keep it private.
Right. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing we should take away from all this viewer sentiment around Tenzin Tselha's vlog?
I think the key takeaway is just how overwhelming and really unified the support for Tenzin Tselha was. And that support came hand in hand with this strong, widespread condemnation of Choesang.
Mhm.
And it's clearly driven by these very serious allegations of mistreatment, exploitation, things that really struck an emotional chord with a huge number of viewers.
And the sheer intensity of it all just highlights the power of these online spaces, doesn't it?
It really does. The volume of comments, the strength of the language, those specific calls to action, it shows the immense power these online communities have to react to and maybe even shape personal stories. Very immediate and sometimes, quite forceful.
Which leaves us with something for you, the listener, to think about. Consider that sheer force, that online reaction to really personal stuff. What does this kind of immediate, often really passionate response tell us about how things are changing between creators and their audiences online today? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for diving deep with us.